Hello everyone, my name is Nanji Mateo. I'm the founder of Interpret.com, and today I'm going to talk to you about a real life story that shook the interpreting community a couple of days ago. A Spanish speaker, let's call him Pedro for this video, called 911 for assistance after being shot in his car. The 911 dispatcher struggled to understand him at first, but a couple of seconds later, they connected the call to a Spanish interpreter. Pedro was bleeding profusely from his gunshot wound and passing out at different points during the call. So much so that the 911 dispatcher had to reconnect the call several times. As the dispatcher tried to get Pedro's address to send help, the interpreter told the dispatcher that Pedro was faking his injury and that he was not in a real emergency. It turns out that Pedro was actually shot and severely injured. Luckily, the paramedics did arrive and help him, but he's now paralyzed and on physical therapy. This is a very unfortunate situation for Pedro, and it's made even worse by the interpreter stepping out of the role and misjudging the situation, which could have prevented Pedro from receiving the help he urgently needed. Pedro's interpreter was certainly fluent in English and Spanish, yet it's fair to say that her behavior was highly unprofessional. This goes to show that just because a person speaks 2 or more languages, it doesn't mean that person is a professional interpreter. But what exactly makes a professional interpreter? Aside from having excellent language and communication skills, a professional interpreter adheres to the expected standards of practice in their field, including principles of ethical behavior. Although these standards may vary slightly according to the field of interpretation and the country they are practicing in, there is a consensus that all interpreters must have clear role boundaries, and interpreters do not take on the roles or tasks of other professionals. The main role of an interpreter is to facilitate communication. For example, an interpreter can render a doctor's explanation of a patient test results from one language to another, but they cannot diagnose the patient nor explain the test results using their own words, as interpreters are not equipped with clinical skills to give that information accurately. That will be like putting a square peg in a round hole. So, in a similar way, Pedro's interpreter determining the legitimacy of a 911 call is outside of the interpreter's scope of practice of facilitating communication. Determining whether it's a real or a fake call will actually be one of the tasks assigned to 911 dispatchers. And interpreters are also neutral during the encounter. They have to remain impartial and unbiased in their work. They refrain from taking sides, offering advice, or expressing their personal opinions. Moreover, they ensure that their beliefs do not interfere with their attitude, their performance, or in their renditions. This principle of impartiality, along with the role boundaries principle and many other professional ethics principles, are embodied in the U.S. Codes of Ethics and Standards of Practice by the NCIHC, the IMIA, and CHIA. As you can see, impartiality is critical for maintaining people's trust and respect in their message. Take, for example, an interpreter who adds or removes words from a message to match their own beliefs and opinions on a situation. You couldn't really trust that that interpreter is getting your message across as a speaker, nor that you are getting the full picture of what other people are saying. Interpreters are in a critical position where certain comments and behaviors can significantly influence the outcome of an encounter. What's more, interpreters have an ethical duty to act with the goal of supporting the health and well being of the person with LEP. What if the 911 dispatcher had hung up as a result of the interpreter's misjudgment? Pedro probably wouldn't have survived. The principles of impartiality and role boundaries are introduced in any basic medical interpretation training. And professional interpreters are well acquainted with the codes of ethics and standards of practice they needed to pass their training and also to get certified as medical interpreters. So, how come this interpreter ended up servicing this call? Well, it's well known in the interpreting community that there is pressure to reduce interpreting costs, which materializes into lower rates for professional interpreters and the hiring of unqualified interpreters for a cheaper rate. This has been commonly nicknamed the race to the bottom, and it has been a huge problem for interpreters, both in the US and outside the US, who are working for US companies. When high quality services are not a priority for clients, professional interpreters are pushed out of the profession and replaced by an unqualified workforce, unfortunately. So I wouldn't put blame on individual interpreters, but on the system that allows these interpreters to be servicing patients in critical situations, especially those clients and companies who hire them without any regard about patient safety, interpretation quality, which ultimately hurts the interpreting community and also the community with LEP, with limited English proficiency, as well as interpreters' livelihood. And this is quite a contrast with the constant revenue growth the translation and interpretation industry has every year. I think we need to put quality and professionalism at the forefront. And for that, you need to pay interpreters what they're worth for their years of experience, training, knowledge, and skills. Something else is that not a lot of people outside of the interpretation world really understand the importance of language access until we have this bad news of the dire consequences of poor language access, as we saw just now about with this 911 call, as well as many other cases. So another problem is that this situation with the 911 interpreter can also potentially have a negative impact on the image people have about interpreters. Unfortunately, this interpreter's behavior makes us look bad and untrained as a professional community, even if most or many of us are very well trained and skilled, especially for phone interpreters who have gained this bad reputation as a result of companies hiring untrained, unqualified people to act as interpreters. We do need more stringent requirements for interpreters entering the workforce, whether that's certification, licensure, or training requirements, so that every person with limited English proficiency doesn't have to suffer the consequences of a poor interpretation. We certainly do not need any more Pedros, any more Willie Ramirez, and any other cases that we've seen so far. So this is important to understand for you, either as a student or as a professional, to know the context of your professional community and also to learn how you can contribute to improve the situation. You can make small or big contributions towards the improvement of the profession. You can either get involved in your community, even get involved in politics if you are into politics, Join a professional interpreting association and help them with their mission. Stay up to date with language access policies and laws and have your voice and an opinion heard. And also educate those around you about the importance of interpretation and language access. These are some steps that you could take today. So I'm sure you will find a way of contributing that makes you tick. We have a long way to go, but a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, and we can go further when we go together. So that's part of the reason why I've been working on something called Remote Interpreters of the Americas. You can become part of it too, and I'll leave all of the details in the description so you can learn more about it. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Until the next time.